Now, history isn't just carved in stone, but these drawings on 11,000-year-old rocks might be warning us about a freaky future. Both the Mayans and the people at Göbekli Tepe made big predictions about humanity's future. What's eerie is that despite being hundreds of miles and years apart, they used similar symbols. Now, let's get one thing straight. Ancient civilizations often depicted their deities as humanoids. You'll find humanoid representations of celestial beings in ancient Egypt, but also in pre-Columbian societies from the Americas. For example, Aztecs had an important deity they called Quetzalcoatl. He was related to the wind, Venus, and the sun. In some ancient Aztec art, he's depicted carrying a tiny handbag. The shocker is that a very similar winged figure was represented by the Assyrians. Now, it's already odd that they chose similar forms to represent their gods, even though these civilizations didn't have any contact with each other. But to draw an almost identical handbag? That seems like a bit of a stretch. Of course, now, when we say handbags, we mean carvings depicting things that look like modern handbags. Not quite Coach or Prada, but you get the idea. Some theories suggest this mysterious handbag could be related to time travel. We've seen that Göbekli Tepe tells of a great flood that destroyed an ancient civilization. But during that civilization's time, they raised cattle and grew food. They knew how to handle seeds and grow crops. According to one theory, this stylish accessory could have been used for carrying seeds. Since Göbekli Tepe is believed to be near where Noah's Ark might have been found, the people of the area could have gathered seeds to plant in the New World after the Great Flood. Strange? Definitely. But so is everything we've been talking about, so let's roll with it. Another theory on the meaning of the handbag has a much more straightforward approach. In multiple ancient cultures, the circle was used to represent spirituality and non-materiality, but the square was often associated with concepts of the earth and materiality. So, what we modern humans understand as a handbag might be an image that symbolizes the reunification of the earth and sky, of the material and non-material elements of existence. Not a bad theory, I would say. But then, who am I? Some researchers, like Graham Hancock, are not convinced with these previous explanations. For him, Göbekli Tepe is all about little gray people and their contacts with ancient earthling civilizations. You see, right in the middle of this ancient site, there's a special pillar called Pillar 43, or Enclosure D. At first glance, it looks like an astronomical calendar. You see the scorpion? That's the Scorpion constellation. And that ball in the center? It's all about the sun's alignment. We know ancient societies like the Maya or Incas were stellar astronomers. So what's the big deal here? Turns out the folks at Göbekli Tepe were talking about a massive natural disaster that wiped out all forms of life before their time. When astronomers recreated the angles and positions from Pillar 43, it showed an astrological setup from over 13,000 years ago. The stone also depicted a tragic event, a mix of a flood and a meteor shower. The headless man? That's humanity's tragic end. And the snake from the ground? Giant waves washing over the earth. And it's not just one stone telling the tale. Pillar 56 shows more of the Younger Dryas event, or as it's called, the terror from the sky. You see animals fleeing and waves crashing as the meteor shower hits. But wait, while Pillar 43 gives us the exact date of the last disaster, Pillar 18 in Enclosure D gives us the date of the next possible wipeout. The art depicted in this pillar zooms in on the constellation of Aquarius. Now, you might have seen the movie The Age of Aquarius or heard some woo-woo theories about how we're entering this phase right now. You see what I'm driving at? Göbekli Tepe might be giving us the date of the next disaster so that we have time to prep for it. These images could be a survival guide for humanity. Or not. Now, this would be bananas if it weren't for one piece of evidence. Let's check the facts. The Encke comet, discovered in 1786, used to be part of a megacomet, 100 miles wide, made of ice, metal, and rock. It broke up and formed a debris field. Now, instead of one huge comet, we've got millions of smaller ones. When the Earth passed through that debris, the folks at Göbekli Tepe saw a firestorm of comets, all coming from the Aquarius constellation. just like on Pillar 43. Now here's the supposed scary part. We pass through that same debris field every year. If you're watching this in September, October, or November, we're flying through it right now. It could happen that these debris fall onto the surface of the Earth all over again, repeating history. But so far, that's just a theory. The mind-boggling question is, how did the people at Göbekli Tepe know about an event that happened before they were all born? In 2019, excavations kicked off at Karahan Tepe, about 40 miles from Göbekli Tepe. But research suggests it might have been settled even earlier. Göbekli Tepe seems to have been a place of worship or an observatory, but Karahan Tepe shows signs of a structured society. Excavations at Karahan Tepe reveal artifacts like intricate carvings, tools, and even possible remnants of buildings. This suggests that these people were not just hunters and gatherers, but had a structured society with spiritual or ceremonial practices. In 2020, researchers started unearthing several other settlements in the area, indicating that Göbekli Tepe was part of a huge metropolis. The whole site is known collectively as Tas Tepler. The thing is, the math around all this has scientists baffled. Around that time, Earth was just leaving its last ice age, and scientists used to think Stone Age civilizations were primitive. But evidence keeps showing up, proving that wasn't the case. For Göbekli Tepe to have existed with that level of tech 12,000 years ago, there must have been an even earlier civilization. That kind of tech doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. And hey, we've got plenty of other proof of advanced societies. Take the Mayans, for example. Recent discoveries have shown they were even more advanced than we previously thought. They built massive cities with roads up to 130 feet wide, painted white to guide travelers at night, a feat you'd expect in places like Portugal or England. These roads, sometimes elevated over swampy ground, formed a network of over 964 settlements, like a giant spider web. A bunch of scientists turned their eyes on this theory, but it could be the connecting point of everything we've been speculating about in this video. After all, the people from the sky could have come down and told the people from Göbekli Tepe about the destruction of a more ancient civilization than theirs. Or not. Remember, don't give up your critical thinking just because you see something on the internet. Anyway, Göbekli Tepe raises suspicions just as Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Egypt. When we mix little green aliens into the equation, it explains one way that surreal engineering feats were possible in these sites. But it also underestimates our human ancestors and their thinking abilities. One of the main characteristics of Göbekli Tepe's architecture are the T-shaped pillars. The heaviest of them weigh 20 tons and are around 20 feet. These pillars were erected perfectly, without so much as a dent in them. Sure, that's pretty hard to do without modern machines. But hey, maybe they figured it out and built it after much effort. Now, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, this old pal is supposed to have cracked the secret of the pyramid builders in modern-day America. He used it to build his own castle and other mesmerizing structures. So, hey, I guess we'll have to keep digging to find out the actual facts about it all, huh? Now, have you ever seen cricket balls that are 3 billion years old? Klerksdorp spheres were found in deposits of the mineral pyrophyllite in South Africa and rock the science world. They do look like tiny ancient cricket balls with seams-like lines around the middle. Back in the 1980s, some folks claimed these spheres had been made by an advanced pre-flood civilization we know nothing about. One museum curator shared stories about how they rotated on their own in a display case. There was also a TV show that invited a psychic who declared the spheres were pieces of an ancient spaceship. But according to geologists, these spheres are actually pretty common concretions or spherical objects formed by different minerals than the surrounding rock. The seam-like lines are just imprints from the host rock's layers building up over time. The Klerksdorp spheres come in different shapes, from noticeably flattened spheres to distinct discs. As for that episode when one of these spheres spun on its own, the curator of the Klerksdorp Museum cleared that up too. He said that when he put one sphere on its glass shelf when a journalist came to visit, the sphere naturally rotated a bit because it's round. The area where the museum is located often experiences earth tremors from gold mining activities nearby. The oldest known human-like footprints could be 6 million years old. They were found on the Greek island of Crete in 2002. If the number is correct, it would mean that early human ancestors may have migrated between Europe and Africa much earlier than we previously thought. This doesn't mean Africa is not the cradle of humankind, though. It could just prove that early human ancestors moved back and forth between continents. Some researchers believe the footprints were left by a bipedal creature possibly related to an early human ancestor nicknamed El Greco. According to scientists who studied them, the footprints have a very human-like shape, with 5 toes and a parallel big toe. Some scientists are skeptical about it and suggest the prints might be from a late European ape. The new study analyzed fossilized marine microorganisms found in the sedimentary rocks to determine the footprint's age and prove it's actually 6 million years. The next amazing find that keeps scientists entertained is the Dorchester pot. It's a beautifully crafted metal vessel with some fancy geometric designs embossed in shiny silver. The pot was discovered in, who could have thought, Dorchester in 1852 under quite unusual circumstances. During a powerful blast, the pot broke into 2 pieces. Scientists believe it was originally embedded within a rock or boulder known as pudding stone. The rock from which the Dorchester pot emerged is dated to be around 500 million years old, so it could mean the pot itself is also that old. The current and less exciting theory suggests that the Dorchester pot is a Victorian-era candlestick holder. Such things were really trending back then, so it's not a surprise to find such fancy household item from that time. The Dorchester pot falls into the category of ooparts, or out-of-place artifacts. Those are objects that seem too advanced for the time period they're supposedly from. If we accept that the pot is 500 million years old, then whoever made it was way ahead of their times in terms of crafts and tech. One extra mystery is that the pot has an engraving of a plant that most likely disappeared from Earth over 100,000 years ago. Sounds like good proof the pot is really extra old. Now, it looks like the oldest map in Europe is a stone from 4,000 years ago. This Bronze Age slab was found in France in the year 1900 at an ancient burial ground. The carvings on the slab show in 3 dimensions the River Odey network with a fantastic accuracy of around 80% over an 18-mile stretch. There are other stone-carved maps around the world, but this one is unique because it shows a specific area to scale. Looks like the slab's carvings don't just map rivers and hills, but also settlements, barrow sites, and field systems. Archaeologists say the slab wasn't used for navigation, but rather to symbolize power. The detailed markings on the slab might have served to illustrate the domain of a local ruler, possibly a prince or king, to show their control over the territory. When the ruler lost power, the slab was likely repurposed as part of a burial vault. The unique artifact was stored in the cellar of a museum. For decades, no one even noticed until several scholars read older reports about the slab and decided to check it out. They conducted a detailed analysis using 3D techniques. Their research proved that the creators of the slab had not only etched lines into the rock, but also modified its surface to reflect the topography of the landscape with high accuracy. The Salzburg cube, also known as the Wolf's Egg iron, was discovered in the late 19th century in Austria. Now, don't let the name mislead you. It doesn't look like a cube at all. It's more like a rounded object with 2 flat sides. Down the middle, there's a groove, and the surface is covered with pits and craters. This unique appearance is the reason why many people think it might be something out of this world. Workers accidentally found this artifact when they blew apart a piece of coal. The coal seam it came from is thought to be over 60 million years old. The Salzburg cube moved between museums, mysteriously vanished in the early 20th century, and then showed up again. A professor from Bonn University suggested it might be from a meteor, but they found no evidence of elements that you'd normally see in meteorites, like cobalt or nickel. Then researchers thought it must be a human-made object, possibly a Victorian-era candlestick holder. No one knows the true story of the cube or its current location. Yep, it disappeared again. Have you heard about the Meister print? It's a fossilized sandal print discovered in 1968, and it has sparked a lot of intrigue. There's a trilobite inside the print, which supposedly went extinct around 500 million years before humans even existed. But many historians think this age is an exaggeration. When Meister found the fossil, it was authenticated. But the scientist who did it didn't confirm it was a human sandal print. He only agreed there was a trilobite there. When another scientist visited the site, he found a 6-inch impression he believed was from a child's moccasin. But the footwear seemed to be new. So, could it be evidence of time travel? Proof that humans existed millions of years earlier than we thought? Or a sign that someone else visited early Earth? Or is it just a rock formation that looks like a sandal print? We still don't have the answers. Back in June 1936, a couple was walking along Red Creek in London, Texas. London, Texas? Yeah, when they stumbled upon something unusual. It was a piece of wood sticking out of what seemed to be an ancient rock formation. About 10 years later, their curious son decided to crack open the rock to see what was inside. And he saw a hammer, which looked surprisingly modern. Then, one unique finds enthusiast decided that the rock encasing the hammer was from the Cretaceous period. This would mean that someone dropped a 19th century hammer while dinosaurs like Triceratops were still roaming the earth. So, if this hammer was truly from the Cretaceous period, then the whole evolutionary theory would be wrong. And if the hammer was modern, it would mean the Cretaceous rock formation it came from was much younger than we thought. But the real answer was much simpler. The hammer was indeed modern, and geological processes had encased it in rock. Minerals can harden around an object in a relatively short time. So, the hammer was probably dropped by a miner a century or so ago, and the rock formed around it afterwards. And no, it wasn't a Victorian-era candlestick holder either. Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Ctesiphon, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie, and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look, and what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic. Explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect. A dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts, only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all. Okay, what if I tell you that the extraterrestrials we all imagine as little green men may actually look like very normal Earthlings and chill in Europe? This is the Iberian Peninsula, and people living there are under suspicion. Ooh. Here's the reason. Somehow, parts of the most important artifacts that the Iberian civilization called Treasure of Valena are made of metal that simply can't be found on Earth, because it's metal from a meteorite. Now let's tackle this step by step. This is the artifact itself, and it's composed of 59 different objects. Bowls, bottles, and bracelets. Is there a pattern there with all those bees? In total, the find weighs around 20 pounds, of which 18 pounds are 23.5 karat gold. Now, if you're not a metal specialist, I'll clarify it for you right away. For comparison, 23 karat gold is 95.8% pure gold, so 23.5 karat is even purer. The remaining percentage goes to other metals to help add strength and durability to the precious alloy. There was also silver, iron, and amber in that set. The artifact could have been pretty straightforward, but for these two, let's call them imposters. Look at this wrought iron bracelet and this hollow hemisphere. Can you see that? Those rusty lines on the hemisphere and the overall weird color of the bracelet do stand out, since everything else is made of purest gold. This all started back in 1963, when a researcher noticed a dark leaden metal among the shiny bowls and bottles. The metal was shiny in some areas and covered with a ferrous-looking oxide that was mostly cracked. Now, just so you understand, gold does not usually act this way. Gold is one of the least reactive of all metals, so it won't even tarnish, let alone rust. To figure out where this suspicious iron came from, researchers turned to mass spectrometry, which checks out the mass-to-charge ratio of molecules. Their findings showed that the nickel in the iron is similar to that found in meteoritic iron. Simply put, the bracelet and the hemisphere are of extraterrestrial origin. Ooh. Now, the exact age of the trove is hard to determine, yet it's crucial. We need to know the exact age to see if it coincides with the start of the Iron Age in the Iberian Peninsula. If it does, then no further questions here. But if it doesn't, well, it's, at the very least, weird, if not suspicious. So there's this three-age system. It comprises the Stone Age, then the Bronze Age, and then the Iron Age. The Stone Age is of no importance here, so let's compare the Bronze and the Iron Ages. The Bronze Age began when it was realized that combining copper and tin produced a material that was more durable than either metal alone. This era was all about major upgrades in tools and weapons, but two standout inventions were writing systems and the wheel. Then came the Iron Age. This time was all about slowly bringing iron into everyday life. Iron was way easier to shape into cool designs than bronze. Now this was a big deal, because iron, especially transformed into steel, provided significant improvements in all aspects of life. Tools became lighter, cheaper, and stronger compared to their bronze equivalents. You get it? Good. So researchers have long debated whether the treasure dates back to the post-Argaric era or the latter part of the Bronze Age. The most recent study claims that those artifacts were created in 1400 to 1200 BCE, and something really doesn't add up. First off, the Iron Age began around 500 years after these artifacts were crafted. Plus, ancient craftsmen couldn't know back then how to work with metals that landed on Earth approximately 1 million years ago. And while the dates are really hard to explain, there is a logical explanation for the craftsmanship. The theory here is that those metal workers simply had access to the fallen meteorite, and thus, they could study it well and discover its properties before using it for decorative purposes. They could have figured it out through trial and error, and once they knew exactly how to work with this extraterrestrial metal, they proceeded to adorn the artifacts with it. Plus, there were the Phoenicians, who contributed to their craftsmanship. Now, it's true that the Iberian people have been processing metal and making pottery long before the Phoenicians settled on the peninsula. But the arrival of new metalworking techniques and the introduction of the potter's wheel enabled them to produce better quality goods much faster than before. So, we figured out the extraterrestrial origins of the Iberian artifacts. But guess what? This area is still under suspicion. The reason for that is the language they spoke. You see, for most modern languages people use today, there will always be some proto-language. Say for Italian, Spanish, and French, it's Latin, hence their similarities. But wait, Iberian was largely spoken where modern Spain is, so why isn't Spanish similar to it? Well, the truth is, no language today is similar to the Iberian. Maybe only the Basque language, but it's because of some similarities found in their numerical systems. Basque is classified as a language isolate, or simply unrelated to any other known languages, and the only language isolate in Europe. The Iberian language is unclassified. While the scripts written in it have been deciphered to various extents, the language itself remains largely unknown. And look at the alphabet the Iberians had. Looks like it doesn't really belong to our planet. But hold up, this one might be a bit of a stretch. When the Phoenicians came to the peninsula, they brought along their alphabet to the Iberians. But honestly, the Iberians probably weren't keen on just copying someone else's writing system, so they tweaked it until it looked completely different. Let's just say they took some inspiration and ran with it. While linguists can guess to some extent how most characters sounded, actually translating the language is still completely impossible. The Iberian language was non-Indo-European and faded away over 2,000 years ago. And there aren't any similar languages left to help us out. Super frustrating, right? Yeah. We got over 2,000 Iberian inscriptions from tombs, coins, potteries, lead plates, and even cave wall carvings. But aside from a handful of words, we're totally in the dark about what they mean. Now, if we could understand their language, we might have learned that they were great thinkers and all, but we can only contemplate the works of art they left. Iberian culture has a lot of amazing stuff made by talented artisans. We're talking about not just metalwork and ceramics, but also detailed sculptures, textiles, jewelry, and other personal bling. But here's the catch. Making all those luxury items depended a lot on a big farming class. At the heart of Iberian society, most folks were involved in farming and taking care of livestock. depending on where you were. The types of farming varied. For example, up in the north, they were all about growing grains, while down in Valencia, they focused on producing olive oil and other agricultural aspects. In the west, raising animals was the name of the game. Still, we don't have much information about the day-to-day lives of the many people doing this essential work. Yet, on the flip side, we know a lot about the upper class of Iberian society, who control these agricultural resources and hire the artisans. By the 7th century BCE, we start to see a group of Iberian princes who were living the good life, trading with the Phoenicians and enjoying fancy luxury items. You can spot this elite class in their burial practices. Cremation was the go-to method for funerals among the Iberians, and wealthy individuals were often found in cemeteries with all sorts of lavish goods and funerary sculptures that give us a peek into the fashion and hairstyles of the rich. Interestingly, starting in the 6th century BCE, there was a noticeable drop in the number of recognizable burials, which suggests that these elaborate funeral customs became more exclusive to a small elite. Meanwhile, the fate of the majority, farmers, artisans, soldiers, and laborers, who made up a big chunk of the population, remains a bit of a mystery. It used to be a pretty advanced civilization, but it vanished without a trace. Researchers think it could have been due to some massive earthquake, but so far, we don't know for sure.
Over the years, archaeologists have uncovered all kinds of stuff on runestones. Curses, poems, protective magic spells, and even inheritance disputes. However, a newly uncovered ancient Norse artifact known as Svingerud Stone has just one word on it. Sounds boring, right? Well, think again, because this might just be the oldest runestone ever discovered. Almost 2,000 years old. But that's not all. Excavations are still ongoing, and depending on what follows next, it could unravel secrets and the true meaning behind the mysterious magical runes. So let's explore and see just how much known history you can rewrite with only one engraved word on a stone. A long time ago, during the first few centuries of the Common Era, Scandinavians and Romans crossed paths. They traded goodies like glass and silver. And eventually, Roman customs and even written culture ended up north. The Nords liked the Roman alphabet but wanted their own letters copyrighted, so they decided to create their own unique characters, which they called runes. Almost 20 centuries later, in 2021, archaeologists were excavating an Iron Age burial site near the village of Svingerud in eastern Norway. Among the cremation graves, they uncovered a reddish sandstone slab that would become a centerpiece in a major Norwegian archaeological discovery. It's the size of a coffee table, measuring just over 12 inches across. The stone was found buried with burned bones and charcoal, part of an early cremation grave. The stone had runes engraved into it, looking rough and shallow, like they were scratched with the tip of a knife or something needle-like. Runestones are not unusual. Archaeologists are used to uncovering runic inscriptions, especially in this region. However, tests show that both the burial site and the carving on the stone likely date back to somewhere between the 1st and 3rd centuries. That places it deep in pre-Viking history, centuries before the Viking Age officially began around 800 CE. That makes it one of the oldest reliably dated examples of early writing in Scandinavia. When you look at these carvings, they either look like magical symbols made to call on Nordic deities to help you, or like random scratches made by an angry man hitting a stone with something sharp. But these are real letters, crude but intentional. It's an ancient writing system used by Germanic tribes across Northern Europe. They were engraved into wood, bone, or stone. Their shapes are straight, angular lines because curves were tough to carve with the tools they had back then. When they met with the Roman Empire, rather than just borrowing Latin letters, the Germanic tribes took the idea of writing and carved out their own version. The original alphabet was called Elder Futhark. It had 24 letters. We can find them on artifacts dating from around the 2nd to the 8th century CE. Its name comes from its first 6 letters: F, U, Th, A, R, and K. Each rune probably had a name that matched the sound it made. For example, the rune that sounds like A was called Anzus. However, nobody from back then left us a memo explaining the names. In fact, the knowledge of how to read them was forgotten until 1865, when Norwegian linguist Sophus Bugge deciphered them by comparing clues. He examined later rune alphabets and ancient poems that referenced the runes, like a detective sketching a suspect from scattered witness clues. For many runes, especially the oldest ones in the Elder Futhark, the meaning is still open to interpretation. They weren't common knowledge, which is reflected by the fact that only some 350 surviving inscriptions remain. This changed eventually when the Scandinavian language evolved from Proto-Norse into Old Norse, spoken by mighty Vikings. The Elder Futhark was reduced from 24 to 16 runes to reflect the changes in the language, thus becoming the Younger Futhark, which was far better spread. Runes weren't really used to write books or keep daily records. Instead, you'd find them carved on gravestones, weapons, and various tools. It's believed that people used runes to show ownership, honor loved ones who had passed away, leave short messages, or sometimes for protection or magic. In the early days, some runes probably had special spiritual or ritual meanings too. One interesting fact about runestones specifically is that they were often used for self-promotion or boasting, like an ancient social media status or a tweet posted on a wall, or better said, a stone. One such example of a runestone from the 11th century where a man named Vigmund had it carved for himself, calling himself the cleverest of men. He even added that he was a ship captain, and yes, he made sure everyone knew that while he was alive. In the Old Norse poem Havamal, Odin says he hung on the world tree for 9 nights, pierced by a spear, to gain knowledge of the runes. This goes to show just how powerful and mystical those symbols were perceived to be. It's fitting that the word rune comes from a Proto-Germanic word which can be translated as secret or whisper. There's a common saying about power being in words, and for the old Germanic tribes, that power felt like actual magic. It's also why it's important to know when this magic came to be. And the Svingerud runestone tells us that. But it's not just when it was written, it's also what's written on it, where, and why. The location where the Svingerud stone was discovered is already a significant archaeological site. It's famous for its incredible discoveries, including the remarkable Jormunbu helmet, the only Viking helmet ever found in Norway. The stone was placed in a cremation pit, alongside the remains of an adult and a few personal items. Thanks to charcoal and bone samples, researchers can figure out how old the runestone is by using a method called radiocarbon dating. The Svingerud stone isn't the first ancient Norse artifact with runes that archaeologists have discovered, not even close. People carved runes into all sorts of everyday objects like combs, jewelry, and knives long ago. Some of those might even be just as old. Other finds have runes, but they're often broken, loose, or don't have clear dating. However, with radiocarbon dating, scientists have confirmed that the Svingerud stone is really the oldest runestone ever found. The writing on it suggests that it was part of a ritual and might have even been a message to the deceased. The inscription isn't long. It's just one word, Idiburg. No one knows exactly what it means. The clearest part says Idibera, and most researchers agree it's probably a name. Maybe Idibera in a genitive form, meaning of Idibera or belonging to Idibera. So this could be the name of the person buried there or someone being honored. There's a decent chance it's a female name, possibly making this the earliest known female rune inscriber in history. But researchers now believe that the Svingerud runestone is a part of a bigger monument. They found more than a dozen sandstone pieces scattered across several graves at the site, and when they assembled them in the lab, they fit together like a puzzle. This suggests they all came from one single upright stone. The main piece with the inscription was found in one grave, but other similar pieces were buried in nearby cremation pits. Archaeologists think it was broken and reused in a ritual, maybe to connect different people or generations who had been buried there. Instead of just marking one grave, it might have first been a memorial and was later put back into the other graves as a symbolic act. Some even speculate that the runes might have been carved by different hands throughout various time periods. The Svingerud stone might be small, but as the oldest runestone ever found with a secure archaeological context, it could be the key to how writing first took root in Northern Europe. This Norwegian archaeological discovery proves that runes were already tied to ritual, memory, and maybe even women. And if it's just a fragment of a larger monument, we've only seen part of the picture. Ancient Norse artifacts like this reshape what we know about pre-Viking history. And with luck, more runestones will follow, maybe even from another female rune inscriber.